and pull an application together. Thank you.
Steady, go.
Hi, I'm Matthew Williams, Club Support Officer for England Boxing, and I'm just going to give a short presentation on funding your club. Now, unfortunately, within England Boxing, we don't have any Don King figures with suitcases full of money that we can deliver to clubs. And unlike Paul McKenna, we can't promise that we can make you rich. But what we can do is give you advice and guidance that will help you to build a strong application to apply for funding. And that's what we're going to cover within this short presentation. First things first, before you apply for funding, there's things that all funders will expect from a club that is making an application. I'm just going to quickly summarise them for you. You'll be expected to have a club constitution. It's basically a set of rules that set out how the club is governed. And there's a template available from England Boxing that you can use as a basis for that. You'll need a bank account, and you'll need to have 2 unrelated signatories, which means that you'll need at least two people that are required to sign cheques, and that they need to be unrelated to each other. Annual account, you'll need to be able to demonstrate the last 12 months of income and expenditure, and that shows that again that the financial systems within your club are up to standard from a funder's point of view. For new clubs, that would be an income and expenditure forecast. So you basically need to demonstrate how the money is used within your club, and a funder will expect to see how their funding has been used should you be successful. You'll need to have bank statements, usually 3, and you'll also need to have certain policies in place, particularly child protection. Sometimes you will also be asked for equal opportunities policies. Again, England Boxing have templates available that can help you with that. Finally, you'll need membership information, so you'll need to know the number of members that you have within your club, potentially the breakdown between males and females, and that shows the funder the type of organisation it's looking to invest in and who that funding would make a difference to. Now, when making an application, there's 3 key things that you will need to be clear about. You need to know what is needed. So what is it that you're applying for? If it is equipment, for example, you need to be very specific of how much it will cost, what specific equipment is needed. So as specific as you can with what you need. You also need to consider when it is needed. There's at least a 3-month turnaround on the vast majority of funding applications. So you need to be able to plan in advance of what you're going to need. So you need to know when it's needed. Also, you need to know why it is needed. You're going to need to demonstrate to a funder the reason that you're asking them for this money and what difference it is going to make. Quick note here, clubs often rightly proud of the difference they've made to young people's lives in terms of the success, having national champions, regional champions, but often funding applications can kind of be too heavy on that kind of information. Ultimately, that's not really what the funder is looking for, although obviously it's a fantastic part of what clubs do. We're going to look at the kind of things that, by and large, funders want to invest in. So what's in it for us in terms of the funder? What's in it for them? Each funder will have its own specific objectives, and you need to be clear about what they are when you make your application, so you make sure that you're addressing the right things in making your case. Now, here's some examples of pretty common things that funders may well be looking for. Increased participation. So are you going to get more people involved in boxing and in sport through what it is that you're proposing? Other things are around improving health. Is it something that will have a positive impact on obesity in your area, for example? Preventing or reducing crime and antisocial behaviour is another common requirement or common objective. Increasing community cohesion, so your club being a place where people from different parts of the community can get together, get along well, learn from each other, etc. And also addressing disadvantage and deprivation. Funds often target the most deprived areas of the country. Now, looking at that, you can see that these are things that boxing clubs day in, day out do very well. What boxing clubs need to be able to do, and what us as club support officers are here to help you do, is to make the case and demonstrate exactly how the boxing club can do that, but also demonstrate the need for these things in your areas. So we do that by providing evidence. The harder evidence that you can provide, the more likely it is that a funder will take your application seriously and be more likely to invest. Here's some tools. I'm not going to go into great detail. The funding guide that England Boxing have produced goes into more detail on these sources of evidence and how clubs can use them. But just a few examples. Sport England's Active People Survey shows how many people are currently participating in sport in your area, so it can demonstrate if there's particularly low participation rates, then that might be something that the club can help to address. Sportworks is an excellent tool from the charity Sported, and that can show the financial value of the work that your club does in the community on areas such as crime and antisocial behaviour, on drug and substance misuse. Again, can provide very powerful evidence. We can look at local crime statistics to demonstrate if there is a particular crime problem in your area and potentially how the club can look to impact upon that. There's public health information available that can show, again, issues with health in your area, whether that be obesity, whether that be related to certain diseases that are linked to inactivity. So again, another way that we can show a need in your area based on, in this instance, public health. And there's a good, excellent tool from Sport England, the Local Sport Profile tool, which gives statistics at local authority level on each of these various different areas of things like deprivation, of health issues, participation rates. So it's a good first source of information. Some other top tips that will help you to build a strong application. Gaining support from your local community will really powerfully demonstrate that there's a need in your area for what it is that you're proposing. So consulting with members of the club, so your boxers, their parents, other interested members of the local community, for example, it might be people that sponsor your shows, and issuing things like surveys, getting a letter of support, again, can be powerful evidence that demonstrate the need for what it is that you're applying for funding for. Identifying partners can help to add weight to an application. Can also bring in other expertise that can help. So, county sports partnerships, local authorities, schools can all potentially help you to meet your objectives and show funders that you're linked in with other community organisations. Particularly with larger funding bids, demonstrating the fundraising that you do as a club is very important. So obviously there's things like your weekly fees that you get, your subscriptions that you get from boxers, things like running a club show. But there's other things that clubs can do, such as bagpacking, sponsored events such as 10k races, for example, car boot sale. Lots of different examples, and some clubs have been very innovative in some of the things that the clubs do to raise their own funding, which potentially can contribute to any pot. Increasing regular income is something potentially that clubs can look at through, for example, recruiting new members, working with schools. So these will help to increase that regular income of money on a weekly and monthly basis. And another really key bit of advice is to have somebody that has a specific responsibility within the club for funding applications that can potentially use the information that's here to seek funding and to work with their club support officer on pulling applications together. So somebody maybe has a bit of time that they can dedicate solely to that can really help. This slide, which you may not be able to see very well on the video, but which we'll provide on the website, is a very broad overview of the kind of things where a club will be more likely and also less likely to achieve funding. In the region of £250 to £10,000, that's where you'll get most funds available and potentially where you can have most success. New programmes, things that will target new participants, are often very popular with funders, so they can demonstrate very specifically that it's their money that's made a difference and got these new people involved. And the kind of things that might be part of a bid include things like equipment, the costs of courses, coaching qualifications for coaches that will help deliver that activity, potentially coaching costs if it's work that the club are doing outside of the club environment, so in schools, for example, on a new project, potentially there can be coaching costs involved. And there's some sources of funding around that have been very favourable to boxing clubs, so the Central Social and Recreational Trust there, CSRT, providing up to £1,000 for equipment. Sport England small grants up to £10,000. There may be local councillors in your area that will be supportive of the boxing club and have a few £100s that they can help with. And another excellent source of funding is your local community foundation. Each county has one. They manage a number of funds in their area that you can apply for. Another excellent one there that's not listed is Sportivate, which provide funding for 6 to 8 weeks of new activity and again, a number of boxing clubs have been very successful with that. Slightly more money, £10,000 plus, is available. I mean, there's funds available up to £150,000, but it does involve more work and much more evidence is required to make the case for that funding. Capital projects, so projects that involve refurbishing a facility, a new build potentially. Again, more money, more evidence required, but that funding is available. Sport England's Inspired Facility is an excellent source of that funding, up to £75,000. Again, a number of boxing clubs have benefited from that. Community foundations again will have potentially will have local sources of funding that can help with those kind of costs. And the areas that we do get asked about as club support officers, but that tend to be much more difficult to find funding for, ongoing running costs. So I think the rent, the bills. Sometimes a contribution may be made to these as part of a wider project. In an emergency, there might be clubs might be able to be helped out, but generally these are seen as the club's own responsibility, and it is difficult to find funding for those ongoing costs. Retrospective funding, funders won't pay for things that have already been bought or paid for by the club. So again, it's important to be able to plan ahead that little bit, to anticipate what you're going to need funding for, and to put an application in suitable time, that you won't be able to get funding for things that have already happened or that you've already paid for. The other thing that's often asked for is trips, overseas events, travelling abroad for box cups, things like this. Again, very difficult to get funding for those sort of trips and for one-off events. So very unlikely that clubs' own fundraising efforts, increasing regular income, are really the ways to go about raising money for those kind of things. And also for minibus, that's another one we get asked about quite often, and again, which very few funders tend to fund, and often if they do, they will require an input also from the club. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour, if you like, of the world of funding and how to make a strong application. There's a lot more information on each of those areas within England Boxing's funding guide, but also your local club support officer is always available to help you to identify and pull together a strong funding application. Thank you.